Hello and welcome to Wingin It, and welcome back to another installment in this series of videos in which we take a preview look at the upcoming Wingspan Americas Expansion. In this video, we're going to be taking a detailed look at 10 birds to look out for in the Wingspan Americas Expansion. These are birds that, from the games I've played with my preview copy, really stood out for one reason or another. In some cases there are similar powers which will get honourable mentions, but I will have picked the one that I think stood out amongst the rest. These are in no particular order and don't necessarily represent the 10 best birds in this expansion, but as I say, just ones that I think you should definitely be looking out for when you have your first few games of Wingspan Americas. The first bird that I think you should be looking out for in Wingspan Americas is the Crested Oropendola. So this is a very interesting when activated brown power. It's a flocking power. You move one hummingbird marker down one space to tuck 2 cards from the deck behind this bird. Now on the surface, this might not seem like that good of a power. You're essentially sacrificing points from the hummingbird track in order to get 2 points here. So in a best case scenario, it might seem like you're sacrificing 1 point from the hummingbird track to get 2 points here. And actually in a worst case scenario, you might be sacrificing 2 or even 3 points on the hummingbird track just to get your 2 tucks here. So yeah, this may not seem like it's actually that worthwhile doing, but the key behind this bird and what really makes it shine are those bonus hummingbird spaces on the hummingbird track. So what you can do with this bird is once you've got 1 or more of your hummingbird tokens onto a bonus hummingbird space, you use this brown power, move the token back down a space so that then when you trigger that hummingbird token again on a future turn, or maybe even on the same turn, you move it back up and get yourself a bonus hummingbird action again, not just that first time that you've used it. So essentially you can think about this as maybe sacrificing a point on the hummingbird track, but you're getting 2 points back here, and you're basically getting a free hummingbird action down the line, which is going to get you maybe another point or maybe a resource that's going to help you in other ways. So I think there's an incredibly high ceiling here with this power, really strong one when used correctly. You've got to be a little bit clever, you've got to be a little bit cute, but as I say, I think the upside here could be huge. So definitely look out for the Crested Oropendola in your games. Next bird on my list is the Great Kiskadee. So this is another interesting when activated brown power. If this is the rightmost bird in its habitat, move it with the action cube to another habitat and continue your turn in the new habitat. So as I'm sure anyone who's played the Wingspan base game will know, there are a set of migrating birds from that core base game where you get to move them to a new habitat, but you continue doing your turn in whichever habitat that bird came from. This is very, very different, however, and you're going to find yourself maybe starting in one habitat and moving this bird somewhere else, and then finishing with activating those other brown powers. And then of course here, with hummingbird activations coming into play at the end of the turn, maybe manipulating where you're able to attract or return hummingbirds in different habitats. So yet to really see how strong this power can be. Had it come up in a couple of games and it was definitely fun and interesting, and there's no other power that really behaves quite like this. So definitely, as I say, one worth looking out for, along with the 2 other birds with the same power in this set, those being the lineated woodpecker and the tropical kingbird. These all do the same thing, just with slightly different food costs or bird points or nest types. So keep your eyes peeled for any of these 3 birds in your games of Wingspan Americas. The next bird to watch is the least Seedsnipe. This has a teal round end power for each bird in your wetlands. Lay 1 egg on this bird. Now this has the potential to be an incredibly powerful bird in the right circumstances. Anyone who's played games on the Oceania boards will know just how difficult eggs can be to get hold of. So a bird like this that gets you guaranteed eggs in your grasslands has 5 egg slots, so you can potentially be filling that up pretty easily. Is going to be onto a winner. It's worth remembering as well that hummingbirds count as birds when you're looking at bird powers or end of round goals or bonus cards. So in this case, you can get this power to activate without actually having any regular birds in your wetlands. Even if you just have a hummingbird in there at the end of the round, you can make sure you're getting an egg here. And of course, any birds that you do play in the normal way will just add on to this and help score more points and get you more eggs going. Goes without saying that this bird is going to be a great accompaniment to any kind of wetlands engine where you're getting lots of tucks and maybe not necessarily generating eggs. But of course, the more birds you've got there, you can get eggs through this teal round end power. So just the 1 point and obviously 2 food. It's a bit of an investment up front, but I think if you get this down in round 1, it's going to sort you out for eggs. It's going to score you a bunch of points. This has a very, very high potential. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for the least Seedsnipe. The next bird to look out for is the magnificent Frigatebird. This is a pink, once between turns power. When another player takes a draw cards action, you both draw 1 card from the deck. So not something we really see too much of, these pink powers that are going to be triggering when other players draw cards and that are going to gain you cards. The real interesting twist here, however, is that both players draw 1 from the deck. So even the player who drew cards originally to trigger this power is going to get a card. Now, when I first looked at this bird, I didn't think it was going to be that good because you are benefiting someone else here and you really don't want to be doing that. So even if you're getting a card, if someone else is getting a card, maybe it's not that much of a game. But what I found with this bird is that in particular in 3, 4 and 5 player games, the player who's drawing cards actually has an incentive to really trigger your pink power here because they get an extra card. So normally when you play a pink power bird, you get the other players who are really trying to avoid activating it, really try and dodge around it and not give you free resource. But I found with this bird the opposite was true, and the other players were actually always racing to try and trigger this pink power because they knew that they were going to be getting an extra card as well. So what happened is this bird was just triggering pretty much every turn, getting a bunch of cards coming through from the deck. And 7 points as well alongside this strong pink power. This is a really good one and definitely one to look out for. I think in 2 player games, this maybe doesn't work quite so well because only one other player can trigger this power and you're both gaining from it. So there's not really a 3rd or 4th player here that wouldn't be benefiting to really help, make this worthwhile going for. But as I say, in those higher player counts, even 3 player, but I think especially when you get to 4 or 5 player games, this card is so good. So definitely look out for and try and get the magnificent Frigatebird into your games. Next bird we have is another pink power. It is the Ruddy Ground Dove. This one, once between turns, when another player resets the bird feeder, lay 1 egg on this bird. So for similar reasons, looking at the least Seedsnipe earlier, anytime that you're able to passively generate eggs, especially on those Oceania player mats, that is a really, really good opportunity to make the most of. And a bird like this, we've not seen this kind of pink power before, triggering when another player resets the bird feeder. And that is something that happens so much in games of Wingspan, not just taking food, not just resetting when all the dice are the same. There are so many brown powers that involve resetting the bird feeder. And so if, maybe another player in your game has got one of those out, you play this and you're essentially just getting 3 points. Maybe it's a predator power that they're playing, and maybe it's not even going to hit, but just by resetting the bird feeder, just by triggering that power, you're getting a free egg coming through here. So lots of egg capacity here. And as I say, being able to get eggs through a different means. So many of the pink powers that we're used to from the base game of previous expansions, they trigger when other players lay eggs. And that's not necessarily something that is always going to happen in your games. But resetting the bird feeder, it always happens, and it always happens a lot. So Ruddy Ground Dove, definitely a strong one to look out for, along with a number of similar powers that also trigger when the bird feeder is reset, including the Bard and Shrike, which allows you to gain worms if there is a worm in the bird feeder after being reset, and the yellow-headed Caracara, which similarly lets you gain a worm or a rat if there is one in the bird feeder, but in this case, you're caching on the bird. So definitely some good birds to look out for here that are going to trigger very frequently. Next bird on my list is the Rufous Hornero. This is a when played power that really stood out when I first saw it. It took a little bit of thinking to really understand how this was going to work. But when you play it, you place 1 egg on the first empty slot in each habitat, and then when you play a bird On each of those slots, you discard the egg and count it towards the bird's egg cost. So really, I think this is potentially a really strong one to get early on. Play that in your grasslands. Once you've already got birds in your forest and wetlands, you're then going to get 3 eggs placed into that second column. And basically, that's your egg cost covered. You know, ordinarily, you're only paying that 1 egg in that second column. But now you're basically skipping that. You're getting those 3 eggs for free with the Rufous Hornero. So definitely a solid one to keep an eye out for. As I say, just helping that tempo early on. Maybe you save yourself a turn or 2 laying eggs with this bird. And, you know, the Star Nest could well come in handy, potentially for an end of round goal or a bonus card as well. But yeah, that when play power, as I say, just the 3 eggs, but really could be helpful early on. So keep your eyes peeled for the Rufous Hornero. Next bird to look out for is the Scarlet Ibis. This is a brown when activated flocking power. You tuck 1 card from your hand behind this bird to draw 1 card. You may reset the tray first. So on the surface, this might look very plain, very bland, very similar to plenty of birds we have from way back in the base game, where you're tucking a card and then drawing 1 to replace it. And we know just how strong those birds are, those card cycling birds, where, you know, maybe you've been drawing from the deck, you're not finding good stuff, you're able to tuck it, score a point, and maybe turn it into something better. The reason that I really like this Scarlet Ibis is that last sentence in the power where you may reset the bird tray first, and that is just so powerful. It reminds me of powers like the White-Throated Dipper and the White Stork from the European expansion, where resetting the tray and just seeing new cards is so incredibly powerful. So this Scarlet Ibis really, I think, combines the best of both worlds there, with that tucking power, your scoring points, your card cycling, but then also having the option to reset the bird tray, see new cards, and just dig through the deck that little bit quicker. So if I see this in the starting hand, I think 9 times out of 10, I'm keeping it, playing it, doing that card drawing, and finding some more good birds. So definitely, if you see this bird in your first few games, playing with the Wingspan Americas, Scarlet Ibis, get it down and see just how strong it can be. A few more birds to go on our list, and the next one is the Southern Lapwing. This is a teal round end power. For each empty slot in your forest, lay 1 egg on this bird or draw 1 card from the deck. Now this might seem quite unassuming, you're just getting 1 point for 2 food, but this teal power, I've played with it a few times, it is so powerful, so very strong to get, especially in that round 1, play that early. You're going to get a lot of points here. But each empty slot in your forest, it's very easy to have empty slots in your forest, especially in that first round. And remember, of course, if you're playing with Wingspan Americas and you're playing with the hummingbirds, if there's no hummingbird in your forest, that counts as an empty slot. So you're potentially getting 6 empty slots in your forest. You know, you could be getting 6 resources from this bird, which is just amazing. It's just unthinkable. There are no birds really that compare to this in terms of that early resource generation through a teal power. You know, usually you get something where maybe you might get 2 points, maybe 3 points or resources. You know, maybe something like a European honey buzzard where you get really lucky and you max out at 5. This, you can guarantee that you're getting at least that many, maybe even more, and you're getting a choice between eggs and cards. And as with some of the other birds we've already looked at earlier on this list, being able to passively gain eggs in a guaranteed way at the round end is just so powerful. So again, this is one where if it's in my starting hand, I'm going to be keeping it, and I'm going to be trying to keep as many empty slots in my forest as possible. So this really synergizes well with any way of getting food outside of the forest. Maybe you've got a hummingbird in the wetlands, or maybe something like a Maine duck, or maybe you're able to use hummingbirds to your advantage and get extra food coming through that way. If you can keep as many empty slots as possible in your forest, this Southern Lapwing is going to score you a bunch of points. Honourable mention as well goes to the Rufous Naped Wren, with a very similar power, except in this case, you're gaining worms from the supply and then having the choice to cache them on this bird. This, I think, is not quite as strong. It's up there, though. This is still a very strong bird. Comes with the slight downside of having to actually play it in your forest. So you're already removing 1 potential empty slot and capping out where this power can really score you points. But again, if you play this early and you know, this, you might not need that much of another food source because you play this in round 1 as your only forest bird and you're going to get 5 worms coming through. You know, that could really set you up going into round 2. And then, let's say, maybe just with some hummingbirds getting some nectar, or maybe some other kind of food co-op going on, you're able to get some more food coming through. You know, you could maybe look at caching here and scoring guaranteed points as the game goes on. So both very good birds for slightly different reasons. Definitely keep your eyes peeled for these birds in your games. Next bird on our list is the white-throated Magpie-Jay. This is another teal round-end power, flocking power this one. Choose any number of birds adjacent to this one and tuck 1 card from your hand behind each. And then for each, draw 1 card from the deck. Now, when I first saw this, I was immediately thinking back to the Rough from the European expansion, which is a much simpler version of this power where you're just tucking 3 cards, up to 3 cards, and drawing that many back. Obviously, in this case, maybe getting more benefit where you could have up to 4 adjacent birds to this one. Now, there's definitely some caution to have because getting 4 adjacent birds in round 1, I'm going to say is basically impossible. But I think still, if you play this in your first grassland slot, I don't think it's that difficult to try and surround this bird, at least with 2 birds. I think it's definitely possible to get 3 adjacent birds. And then you're getting a bird that, as I say, is basically like a Rough, where you're getting that card cycle, you're getting that point scoring. So I think this is a strong one. Not quite as good as the Rough, but any time that you're able to get that passive point scoring, that passive card cycling at the round end, where you're guaranteeing the number of points, the number of tucks you're getting, one to watch out for sure, this white-throated Magpie-Jay. And last but by no means least, the final bird on our list is another teal power. It is the white-tipped dove. In this case, at the round end, you choose up to 3 birds with seeds in their food cost and cache 1 seed from the supply on each. Looks very unassuming, looks quite plain and boring, and why is this on the most interesting birds list? Well, this is here for its strength. I've played this bird in so many of my games of Wingspan Americas already, and it's basically guaranteed me 12 caches each time. So if you think about it just from pure point scoring, you know, a 13-point bird for 2 food, I'll happily take that if I can get that down in round 1. So, you know, seeds, it's basically the most common food type that you're going to see in birds' food costs. So I think, you know, you can guarantee yourself those 3 caches each round without having to try too hard. I mean, already this bird qualifies for itself, so you just need a couple more. And yeah, huge number of caches is possible with this bird. So not super interesting from a mechanical point of view, but interesting from point scoring. And if you want to do well and you want to maximize your points, look for those strong birds. White-tipped dove, definitely high on my list. So those are my top 10 birds to look out for in the Wingspan Americas expansion, including a few honorable mentions. Before I end the video, couple more honorable mentions to look at. There are so many strong bonus card birds in this game. I thought about including some of them on this list, but to be honest, I'd probably put all of them on this list and it'd make it a little bit boring. So thought I'd save those for the end. In particular, 2 key different types that really, really stand out. One that definitely reminds me of an existing bird already in the game, that being the Plains Wanderer. From the Oceanic expansion, we have the white-browed tit spine-tail and also the Brazilian merganser. These birds allowing you to gain additional bonus cards for each bird in your forest and wetlands respectively. So again, as I've already talked about, hummingbirds, they count as birds. So if you can get this bird, either of these 2 down late in the game, maybe look at 6 bonus cards, which is just unreal. It's so good to be able to get this bird late on in the game. You're almost guaranteeing yourself to see a really good bonus card. And similarly, there are some other types of bonus cards where instead of looking at a particular habitat, you're looking at a particular nest type. So here's 3 examples in the horned guan, the sun parakeet, and the marsh seed eater. So obviously in each case, matching the nest type. If you can combine this maybe with the matching bonus card, or maybe an end of round goal, or maybe you just happen to have played lots of these birds. I think in any of my preview games that I've played, you know, basically guaranteeing myself looking at 3 bonus cards, but in some cases you're looking at maybe 6, 7, 8 bonus cards. There's no other birds that can do this so consistently. So yeah, I think any of these kinds of birds, they're going to let you draw this many bonus cards. You're going to see some good stuff. You're going to get a good number of points. So definitely look out for these bonus card birds as well. So there we go. Hopefully plenty of good birds to look out for. Lots of birds in Wingspan Americas, 111 in total. I featured just a few of them here today. But if you'd like to see the full list, I have another video where I just go through, read out the bird name and the food cost and the points of the power. So take a look at that if you want to get yourself familiar with all the birds. But as I say, I think this is a slightly more condensed, a slightly more detailed look at those, which I think are the most interesting to keep your eyes peeled for. Wingspan Americas is coming out very soon. I do hope you all enjoy it. I've had a blast playing it in the preview copy that Stonemaier very generously sent over to me. And yeah, when you do get your hands on it, do look out for these birds. I think there's some really fun ones that I've not even had time to look over today, but these definitely being the most interesting ones. Potentially some really strong prowess here that can help you score a lot of points and have a lot of fun in your games. If you'd like to see more of Wingspan Americas, I've got a few other preview videos that you can take a look at, and I will link to those at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.